This is going to be an unapologetic presidency, which is so refreshing to me. I thought Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had to be embarrassed when President Trump was talking about common sense. We're going to get back to common sense, get rid of this transgender nonsense, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
We saw the pardons that came between that. We saw what was going to happen, and he did it 15 minutes before leaving office, going out, really, Sean, as crooked as he came in. It's just so obvious. I mean, President Trump could have done that for himself before he left office. He didn't. Look at all he dealt with over the last 4 years.
Everything that they went nuts about with respect to Trump, Biden actually did. He pardoned Fauci, he pardoned Milley, he pardoned his son, he pardoned his family preemptively. Like, all this stuff that they had accused Trump of potentially and hypothetically doing, Grant, he never did. He got stuck with the accusation, and then Biden goes and does it. Welcome to the Sean Spicer Show. It is Monday. It is Inauguration Day. It is Martin Luther King Day. We have a new president. We have a new vice president. I was at President Trump's rally last night in Washington. Epic weekend. I wish I had like a whole show just to get into it. The feel of this city is so different than it was 8 years ago. I will just say it and get it out of the way. I'm jealous. I feel like this news team's coming in. They're going to hit the ground running. They're not facing the same resistance. I was looking at pictures the other day. My van got chased, leaving the Capitol, going to the White House. These guys were being celebrated. People are wearing MAGA hats. Joe Biden, by the way, we'll talk about this in a second, on the way out the door, pardons not just Fauci and Milley and the January 6th committee. We heard about that. But right before he becomes an ex-president, it's the whole family. Talk about that. Two of my former colleagues, Grant Stinchfield and Jen Pellegrino, both here to break everything down. And tomorrow, by the way, we're going to go through these executive orders. I mean, he talked about 200 plus today. This is a day of action. We've got Ashley Hayek and former Congressman Nan Hayworth with us. We're going to get to all of that. Before it gets going, we got a new president. We got a new vice president. It's a new year. A lot of us are talking about the new year, new resolutions. If you made wellness or health or losing weight part of your 2025 New Year's resolution, here's what you need to know. There is no company in America that aligns more with the Make America Healthy movement than PhD weight loss. I've showed you guys before. I've had him on the show, my buddy Seb Gorka. I'm comfortable in saying this. He's a good-looking man, and he's lost a lot of weight. So is his wife, Katie. I talked to Seb about what he had done, and he told me about PhD weight loss. I called them up. I signed up for the program. It is not a diet. Trust me, I've tried every fad diet. This is a plan, a new lifestyle, a way to make wellness part of your journey. You meet with a nutritionist. There's accountability every single week. They send you some initial food to help you go straight to your doorstep. It all starts with a simple phone call. Call PhD Weight Loss at 1-864-644-1900. Or better yet, go to myphdweightloss.com, myphdweightloss.com. Tell them I sent you, because it's time to get healthy again with the folks at PhD Weight Loss. All right. I want to get to the speech, a lot to get to. We might even touch base about TikTok because the president had a bunch. I had a big op-ed in the New York Times where I laid out what I think the vision for this country is. It's on my social media feeds if you want to see it. I don't recommend going to the New York Times. You guys know that. But I think it's important that people understand, whether you're on the right or the left, the new regime that's coming in and the agenda that they have, because it's going to get done. All right, before I bring in the panel, I just want to tell you guys, if you are overwhelmed with back taxes or unfiled returns, get ready, because since COVID ended, the IRS has hired over 20,000 new agents that are proposing these pop-up, pay-up notices all over the country. People are getting them. And I know we have a new president, but at the end of the day, we still have a bureaucracy in a country that is in debt, and these IRS agents are going hunting for money. If you're worried about IRS collection tactics, you don't have to. The folks at Tax Network USA are the best in the business. These guys know which agents to call, which to stay away from. They've recovered over $1 billion for their clients. So if you're behind on taxes, whether it's $5,000 or $5 million bucks, tax season is now going to come upon us again. So if you're in trouble from last year, these are the best in the business. You want to make sure you have professional help. Protect your financial security. Get guidance from them. It's the easiest thing. Visit TNUSA, that's Tax Network, TNUSA/Sean Spicer, or call 1-800-958-1000. It's a free consultation. You have nothing to lose. You have a ton to gain. Take control today. Go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. All right, let's break it all down. A lot to get to. My former colleagues, this is like a little former office meeting. Jen Pellegrino, she used to be on Newsmax with me, but she is now the Senior Director of Media Affairs and the Chief Spokesman for the folks over there at America First Policy Institute. And were we time mates, Grant, at any point? I can't even remember what time slots. I moved around a little. My buddy, Grant Stinchfield, he is the host of the Stinchfield podcast. He's amazing on the radio, and he's got a show on Real America's Voice. I mean, I don't know if he sleeps, but it's one of the hardest working guys in the media because he's on everywhere, radio, podcast, TV. Guys, good to see you. Jen, ladies first. Tell me what you thought of the speech.
Yeah, what a great day, Sean. You think of how dark it's been here in Washington the last 4 years. President Trump outlined so much of that and really delivered a message of unity. He used that word in this speech. He said the golden age of America it's a new golden age here. And I think it was a speech that really touched on so many issues that were important to the people that voted him into the office this time around, that delivered that historic mandate, talking about issues like DEI, talking about our military, those that dealt with the vaccine mandate and were pushed out of our military. He's bringing them back in with back pay. There are so many of these issues beyond the border, beyond the economy, the cultural issues that he touched on, that he said, we're not going back there. We're defining two genders in this country, men and women. So refreshing to be able to hear that from that podium after all we heard from Joe Biden, who was sitting there to the side, Kamala Harris, who nearly became our president. And you see a changed man, I think, in President Trump, having been through what he experienced in terms of the lawfare over the last year, in terms of the near assassination that happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, which he spoke of, saying how God saved him that day. So it really is a return to the American values that so many people believe in and want to see at the forefront of policy in this country. And I'm just really excited to see all that's ahead as he begins to sign these executive orders, Sean.
Dr. Stinchfield, what did you take away from the speech? What was the big thing that you said? Yes, I'm glad he said it.
Well, it was almost the tone of it, which was so great. So while I'm celebrating, I'm like on cloud nine. All of us here, we've been waiting 4 years and 3 months for this day to happen. When we knew the election was stolen from him and he wasn't going to be president for the next 4 years. Now he's back. President Trump's tone today was not really a tone of celebration. It was a tone of business. Yeah. This is the shock and awe that America is back. And I think it's going to be a take no prisoners presidency. He's assembled maybe the greatest cabinet in the history of all presidential cabinets, seeing them standing behind him. And one piece of news, which I think is really important, moments after he took the oath of office, Sean, the CBP1 app was shut down. You log on that. I have a friend of mine, Oscar Ramirez, who's on the border. He was getting word from the illegals looking to cross this end run around the immigration system. There is a sign that is up that says all appointments are now canceled. This app is shut down. That's within minutes of taking office. So promises kept, promises delivered literally within minutes of taking the oath.
So the thing, to what Jen said, because I was reading the chat on YouTube and stuff as people, and they were like, wow, this is kind of partisan. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But here's the thing. Jen kind of ticked off a bunch of the highlights. I was like, okay, this is everything he promised. All he's actually doing, and you just said it, Grant, it was like, hey, guess what? I promised you a bunch of stuff as a candidate. I'm not going to wuss out of this. I'm going to do every one of the things. And day one, I'm going to start, show you progress. I felt like, what did you want him to do? Get up there and be like, all right, I know I said I was going to shut the border down, but I changed my mind yesterday. Like, this was a guy who got up there and said, you voted for change, and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to tell you about it right now, Jen.
And Sean, on that note, in his speech yesterday at the Capital One Arena during his rally, he said, somebody said on my team, oh, maybe I should release some of these orders, a few at a time. And he said, the hell I'm going to do that. These are all going out at once. You know, you pushed me into office. You hired me essentially to go in and get to work. And we've got a lot of work to do. We're not wasting any time. And I love to see that. I love the symbol of him sitting at that desk, which he's going to be doing in the Capital One Arena, sitting there and
Wait,
signing
do you know
those
that?
executive
So
orders.
tell me what you know. Is he, I've been, so the idea that he's just sitting there getting this stuff done, I think that really is hugely symbolic.
In front of how many? 20,000 people in this arena that obviously we're going to be out in the cold today in Washington. Weather took everything inside, but you've got a massive rally there. And for those people who have been through so much, who have felt like they've had a target on their backs over the last 4 years, who've watched this country decline under Joe Biden, to sit there and be able to watch firsthand their president signing these executive orders to bring the country back to the greatness, not only that we had during the last Trump presidency, but even greater given what he could have done over the last 4 years had he been president. It's just going to be so incredible for them to watch and for the rest of us as well.
Sean, I had a chance, I was lucky enough to talk with Peter Navarro this morning. So that's President Trump's trade guy. Right now, as we speak, if everything goes as planned, President Trump should be signing and releasing a memo on trade, which will issue 15 different investigations, which is what he called them, really studies, maybe a better word, that we could take actionable items. And he said this presidency is going to be about tariffs and lower taxes. So I have been saying for a long time that I think the tariffs were going to be used as a threat more than they would actually be instituted. I'm not sure that's right. I think tariffs are going to be a big plan of raising money for the United States of America so he can cut taxes for the American people. And this trade memo, according to Peter Navarro, right now, as we speak, should be historic in nature.
So the thing that I find fascinating is, I mean, whether it's the memo or the orders, like, I was thinking back, I don't know what it was, 5 or 6 that we did in 2017. I think Biden did 22. This isn't, I mean, we'll go through this in a second, some of the big buckets, but I'm just like, this is no joke. Like, it's very clear that he wanted to send a signal that there's a new sheriff in town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is the shock and awe. That's, I mean, they're even calling that with inside his administration. This is about shock and awe that America is back. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Jen, but it really is amazing. This is going to be an unapologetic presidency, which is so refreshing to me. I thought Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had to be embarrassed when President Trump was talking about common sense, where you get back to common sense, get rid of this transgender nonsense, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there you see Joe Biden smirking. It was very odd. Bill Clinton was like laughing through the whole thing. I don't know whether he was taking joy in Biden being embarrassed, but that whole scene.
By the way, what did you think? What do you think? Like, so I was showing people this on the live feed, but to your point, like, what do you think from the rotunda out to the steps? Do you think that there was ever like that Biden said, like, hey man, I wish you had told me about that, or like, because you're right, it was a complete repudiation.
Mm-hmm.
What an embarrassment, right, Sean? I mean, you think about how Biden 15 minutes beforehand went and pardoned the rest of his family. No surprise there, you know, going in the same way he came.
Really? No surprise, Jen? You weren't surprised at all?
No,
I'm not. No, I mean, are you kidding me? How often do they tell us, you know, he's not going to pardon Hunter? We heard Karine Jean-Pierre from the podium so many times over. We all knew he likely would, and he did. We saw the pardons that came between that. We saw what was going to happen, and he did it 15 minutes before leaving office, going out really, Sean, as crooked as he came in. It's just so obvious. I mean, President Trump could have done that for himself before he left office. He didn't. Look at all he dealt with over the last 4 years. Such a contrast.
It's just so funny that, like, Trump gets, Jen, to your point, on his way out the door last time, Trump gets stuck with all this. He could have done this, and he was proposing this. And they crapped on him for things like he could have gone after his enemies, but he didn't. He could have pardoned himself, but he didn't. But the media got hysterical about each one of these things. Everything that they went nuts about with respect to Trump, Biden actually did. Like, he took away 400 hard pass of members of the media without any silence. He pardoned Fauci. He pardoned Milley. He pardoned his son. He pardoned his family preemptively. Like, all this stuff that they had accused Trump of potentially and hypothetically doing, Grant, he never did. He got stuck with the accusation. And then Biden goes and does it.
And Biden will get a pass from the mainstream media, I'm sure, on all of this. But let me make something clear about the pardons, and not to shamelessly self-promote the podcast, but I break it down today in the podcast about these pardons. So according to the Supreme Court in 1886, okay, you ready for this?
Yep.
Pardons are plenary, can be exercised either before a legal proceeding taken or during their pending proceedings or after conviction. So before, during, or after, you can pardon. So you can make the argument whether it's unconstitutional or not to issue a pardon, a blanket pardon like this. The Supreme Court would have to reverse itself, but it gets even better. Okay. In 1915, the Supreme Court ruled that a pardon must be accepted. It cannot be forced upon the subject. And if it is accepted, okay, this is a quote. The pardon carries the imputation of guilt. Accepting it is an admission of guilt.
Wait, so just repeat that. Where is that?
Wait, 1950.
That's so huge. Tell me, what is that? Is that from the court itself?
That's from the court itself. It was Burdick versus the United States. I believe it was Wilson was going to pardon somebody who was set to testify in front of a grand jury, and there was all this talk about whether or not, he would still have to testify, because a lot of people are questioning, all right, well, you can't take the fifth now because you won't incriminate yourself. Actually, this ruling still says that you still have a right not to incriminate yourself, pardon or not, but it made it clear that you have to accept the pardon in order for it to be valid, okay? Because the guy who was going to testify in front of the grand jury didn't want to accept the pardon. So it has to be accepted.
And so in that case, when he didn't accept it, what happened?
I believe he ended up still testifying, and there was questions about whether or not he could be convicted on this stuff with the pardon, and they said he could and he paid a $500 fine and was. Now, $500 in 1915 was a lot. This was the editor of a newspaper, the New York Tribune. I don't know all the backgrounds of the whole case, but my takeaway from the case was that the Supreme Court looked at it as a admission of guilt if you take the pardon. And so if you accept the pardon, you're admitting your role in something. So I would like the mainstream media to literally ask Adam Schiff, Liz Cheney, Mark Milley, some of these, Michael Fanone, this cop from J6, he pardoned him too. So I'd like to know, do you
By the way,
accept
he
the
also
pardon?
He also pardoned the cop that shot Ashley Babbitt.
Yes, Bird, I believe that guy's name was.
Michael Bird. So wait, the two takeaways from what you're telling me are, one, they have to accept it. So Adam Kinzinger, Milley, Fauci, Liz Cheney, and his family have to accept it. Now, I'm going to say that his family is going to say yes, because Fauci may not have known or something or whatever. But you can't, if you're his sister, you got to know that he's doing this. Okay. And then secondly, what you're saying is that according to this case, that's an admission of guilt by accepting the pardon.
Yeah, well, the quote is, a pardon carries an imputation of guilt. Accepting it looks as an admission of guilt. That is how the Supreme Court wrote it. So take that for what you meant.
I think just issuing the pardons is an admission of guilt on behalf of all of the Biden family. Obviously, he knows they've been up to no good. The conservatives have been, pointing fingers, obviously, at the Biden family, looking at all the evidence over the years, saying, this is what we've got here. Nobody wanted to take a look at it. They know what was ahead, but obviously President Trump has work to do. So this is interesting to see how that will play out.
All right, so Jen, Grant brought up the idea of the media. Like, do you think that you've been in and out of the media. Do you think that any one of these reporters is going to do anything close to what Grant suggested?
Of course not. I mean, Sean, we all know this.
I know that.
They're preparing. They're looking at the lawfare that's about to take place. Obviously, there have been a number of groups that are preparing for these executive orders to go after the new Trump administration, and they're all ready to pick apart every executive action that's going to take place over the next multiple days here. They're ready to go after him. It's going to be the same playbook we saw over the first Trump administration.
So, Grant, I want to read you this. This is
haven't.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Jake Tapper tweeted this out. I'm glad we're all sitting. On December 3rd, 2020, I asked President-elect Biden about reports that Trump was considering preemptive pardons. He said, quote, "It concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice." That's what so Jake Tapper tweeted that out today. Now the question is, do you think that anyone at CNN is going to, who, by the way, just lost a $5 million lawsuit for defaming a Navy veteran, will do anything close to this to look at this?
I don't think they will. And I would like them also to run a clip from Joe Biden. I think it was a week or two ago. He was asked about pardoning himself, and his answer was, "Pardon myself? Why would I do that? I didn't do anything wrong." So if you didn't do anything wrong, you wouldn't pardon yourself. Then why are you pardoning your family if they didn't do anything wrong? Why are you pardoning the J6 committee? Under his philosophy of why he wouldn't pardon himself would mean he wouldn't pardon those other people. Go play that clip over and over again for me. But they're not going to revisit that because they're going to bury this. You know, I saw a meme. Biden will be relegated to a dash mark. It'll be President Trump, right? 45-47. Biden's the dash mark. That's it. That's all this guy is.
Yeah, you know, these so-called journalists, they should be thrilled that President Trump is back in office, not only for their ratings, which have been in decline, but also the level of access they're now going to have. I mean, my goodness, they had none during the Biden administration. We once, I think, saw President Biden at the podium in the White House briefing room. How many times was President Trump there? And I anticipate if it's anything like the last rodeo, he'll be in front of that podium quite a bit. He's obviously got a capable press secretary in Caroline Leavitt, but we know how much he loves talking to the media, all of the media. We never saw him say, "Oh, I don't want to speak to CNN." They were one of the first that he would go to. You didn't see that for the last administration. So I would hope that these journalists would actually do their job for a change and get that access and give transparency that we deserve. But I don't have that much confidence given what I've seen over the last few years.
Sean, who are these so-called journalists? Go ahead,
Sean, let me ask you, because you were press secretary for President Trump. So, and this is a different time. It clearly is, as you mentioned, the mood, the feeling, everything is different. The knowledge that President Trump has coming in. What do you think happens with the alternative media in the White House press room? You've got The First, where we're broadcasting from. You've got Real America's Voice, that my show. You've got One American News. These alternative conservative outlets, do they get more access than ever before? Do you think President Trump realizes the role that organizations like those played in his election?
Yeah, so you're bringing up a really good question, and it's twofold. So the first question is access. What Karine Jean-Pierre did, and I've beat this drum a couple times before, is she stripped the hard passes of all of these people, the Daily Signal, Breitbart, all these people, and they basically made it harder to get into the White House, and no one from the mainstream media complained. And so I don't generally share conversations I have with the team or the president, but I will tell you, because I've been public about it, that I have shared with them that the first thing they need to do is undo all that and get back to the model that I had, which is nothing unique, but basically my philosophy was the more the merrier. Now, if that means Grant Stinchfield or Jen Pellegrino or Sean Spicer wants to come in and cover the White House, then we can't, right? My view was, I don't care if it's right or left. I'm just going to say yes to everybody you want to come in. That's the first part. They need to restore the hard passes and the access, because right now, if I wanted to apply for a pass under the rules that Karine Jean-Pierre put, I couldn't get in and you couldn't get in. You have to get first credentialed by the House Gallery on Capitol Hill. And the only way that you get, and see, this is why this is a cute little trap that they've set. You have to get a House pass, you have to prove that you cover the House on a regular basis. I don't do that. I don't believe you do that, Grant. And so therefore we wouldn't qualify for that. Well, if you don't qualify for that under Karine Jean-Pierre's rules, you can't get a White House pass,
Sean,
yeah.
I was just going to say, it also raises the question, what is the future of the White House Correspondents Association, right?
That gets to part two.
For a number of years. I think back to 2020 when I was in the White House, and obviously we had COVID rules back then, and you'd get in trouble if you were in there either without a mask or, out of place. They only had so much room in that briefing room. And I know that the administration was not happy with that. They wanted the smaller outlets like I was with at the time to be in that room. And they said, okay, we'll invite you in here. But it was a constant battle with everybody else in there that leaned to the left, that didn't want people like me in there. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle this.
And that gets back to the point that Grant was asking, though, which is that what she should do, what Caroline and President Trump should do, is say, okay, I can't force anybody to come, but I will grant access to anybody who wants to, and then we will highlight them. We will give interviews. I talk to people on the right who have been in the briefing room that have been absolutely shut out with cringe Jean-Pierre. And so, as you guys know, when I was there, I brought in Skype voices. I called on reporters that normally had not been called on during the Obama years. So they need to make it proactively something that they do, that they say, great, you attend the briefing, I'll call on you, because for a lot of outlets, they can maybe get access, but then even after they get access, they won't get called on. And that's equally important so that they can come into the White House, they get attention. And Grant, I think that it's not just shows and outlets. You're right, the First and OAN and all that, but it's also shows. Like I have, let's just take Megyn Kelly, for example. She's not with a network, but she might want to go down. So could she go down and get a question or an interview? They need to, or, Dan Bongino or whomever. But the point is that even if you're not affiliated, President Trump, I think, really used effectively long form and independent media. And they should really do a lot of that again. And then lastly, I'll just say this, is that to Jen's point, the White House Correspondents Association is an outdated, left-wing, useless organization. And the more and what happens is, that they went and made a deal with the press office in the early 1990s and said, hey, instead of you having to do all the ridiculous logistics about who's in the pool and who's doing that, we'll do it for you. And I think that this White House should reclaim a lot of those responsibilities and say, hey, thanks for coming.
Yes.
This is not your room. These are not your seats. This is a government room and everybody gets access to it, not just you guys.
Well, I remember when I was back at Newsmax with you guys, the White House Correspondents' Dinner was happening, and our boss, the owner of Newsmax, asked me if I would like to go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I respectfully declined. I said, I can't go there. What? These are the same people that call me a racist and do the most horrible coverage of our shows. I can't go, and I think there were a lot of people in my boat that ended up not wanting to go.
Oh no,
I'm not sure who
Grant, I got in
taking.
trouble for not going. I mean, I was reprimanded because I refused to go for the same reason. I was like,
three of us that aren't there anymore.
Hey, I went as well, and I got a lot of grief from other people that they saw pictures of me there, and I said, listen, I was invited. One year I did decline, but the first time I did go, didn't get a lot of good feedback about it. And, I guess my philosophy at that time was, listen, we should have a presence. We shouldn't be pushed out of that room. So I went. But man, they don't like us at all. And I really hope that this new admin
give them credibility.
Takes control over the briefing room.
Totally with you. All
exactly.
Right. I want to get back to today because this is about President Trump. But before I do that, if you are the person that owns a business or runs a business, you're in charge of the finances, you've got between 5 and 5,000, who cares? 5 million, doesn't matter. You could be the biggest company in the world. And you run the finances. I'd like to make sure that you go and do yourself a huge favor and get yourself a ramp card. Now, this is a blank one. I'm not dumb enough to put the numbers on there, but it looks like a Visa card. It says ramp. If you sign up at ramp.com/Spicer, you can get virtual and actual physical cards issued to you. The virtual ones, like within 15 minutes. I mean, you can start doing this. It's a total game changer in terms of saving you time and money on your expense management system. One of our previous guests got the ramp system up and running real quick and said to me, you're not going to believe how much better it makes our lives. You're not chasing down credit card receipts or spending hours doing expense reports. You can literally set limits for all the various employees you have and put time and money back in your thing. It's their automatic accounting software collects the receipts, categorizes everything in real time so that you don't have to. It's easy to use and easy to get started. And if you act now, you can get $250 when you go to Ramp. Go to ramp.com/Spicer, ramp.com/Spicer. Cards are issued by Sutton and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. All right, guys, I just want to talk a little bit about the logistics of today, because I know some people were disappointed that it was in the Capitol as opposed to outside. And this morning, I started to think for a second that after the rally last night, I was like, this is really a historic presidency. It's non-consecutive terms. The work of like AFPI has paid off big time because the president's ready to go. I think a lot of the things he's going to, not just the executive orders and the action, but the next 100 days, the tax package. I mean, and so I thought to myself, there is something unique and different about this term that's about to start. And it's almost fitting that it's different in terms of the backdrop of the inauguration, that it's almost like I kind of thought about it the other way. Instead of being a disappointment that it wasn't traditional and outside, it's non-traditional. That's very much in kind of on brand, as the kids like to say, Grant.
Well, it's a good way to look at it. I think his speech was great. I wish it was outside. I wish I would have seen the 200,000 people that were expected to show up. I think there's nothing like that scene of so many people there, but it was cold. But I really don't believe this had to do with weather. I don't. I think the threat level right now against President Trump is higher than it ever has been. I'm looking at the security at Mar-a-Lago. I was just down there a few weeks ago. I've never, even when he was president the last time around, I've never seen it like this.
No, you're right. I when I went down, I was blown away. I mean, in the last, 6 months, suddenly they're sweeping cars before you get on the island. I'm with you. But I'll tell you what, Grant, and I'm just going to throw this out at you because I agree with you. I love the pomp and circumstance. But Jen, the thing is, as a guy that owned this, if we had done it outside, Grant, the media would immediately be picking apart how many people were there and whether it was bigger or smaller. And it would have been, today is about the action. And the
Isn't
focus,
that when we bring in Sean Spicer and say there were 2 million people?
No,
there,
see, that's the point. But my point is, and maybe I'm just personally like goof. Thank God we don't have
a little PTSD.
Right. Maybe that's just, it's a personal thing. But Jen, I feel like we just took the issue off the table. The press can't talk about it because it was done for, whether it was security or weather, I don't care. I kind of feel like the focus was on Trump and what he was saying and what he was going to do, not on some peripheral logistical optical issues. And maybe that's just because it is PTSD.
I don't know, Sean. I think that's one way to look at it, the silver lining, if you will. I too, like Grant, miss seeing the crowds out there along the National Mall. I think it's just a beautiful scene, just a historic moment. You look forward to that, especially. I was at the last inauguration for President Trump. It was an awesome experience standing out there on a relatively mild day. Would have been nice to see everybody out there today. And listen, I don't think you can get around the media finding criticism no matter what happens, because they will still say that X number of people didn't show up. I'm sure there will be shots of the empty mall and criticizing Trump using those images. But at the same time, it does provide that opportunity that we wouldn't have seen before. We would have seen him likely at the White House signing those executive orders. Now he gets to do it in front of these amazing Americans who traveled from all over the country to witness this historic day. So I think that is really cool and honestly something that I think, like you said, makes it different, makes it really special and unique. And if we know one thing, is that the Trump team and the president himself, they always find a way to make these people feel recognized. And, he looks at this like he's building a TV show almost. I see in a lot of the events that he does. And just to have that desk there in the Capital One Arena, I think is really special.
I want to remind everybody out there watching that as we celebrate today, know that President Trump is about business, but he's going to need all of us together to be about business too. Sean, I'm telling you, the attacks from the left are not going to stop. The lawfare isn't going to stop. The craziness from the mainstream media isn't going to stop. And as much as President Trump is responsible for the Make America Great Again movement, I really think all the people out there that voted for him, supported him, attend these rallies, are his voice at the water cooler. They are going to be needed. All of us are going to be needed now more than ever before. This doesn't end because President Trump is now in office. It might get a little bit easier. Like, I'll be honest, it'll be a little bit easier. But by no means is this battle over. They despise this man, and they still despise us just as much as ever before.
Grant, you're spot on there. And, so many people look at organizations like AFPI and think, well, okay, mission accomplished. President Trump is back in office. But that's not certainly how we look at it. We are thrilled about this new administration. But there's so much work to do because in 4 years, somebody has to carry that torch, and we have to keep out there with the messaging, the policies, driving this forward. And like you said, it's not just those of us in this Washington bubble, but it's the American people out there that have fought for this, that worked so hard over the last 4 years to get the message out and deliver that mandate. You simply can't slow down because the momentum that we have right now is too great.
Yeah, I was walking through DC the other day, and somebody from America First Legal ended up walking near me, and we were talking about the work America First Legal, America First Policy Institute. Like, we have finally started to build institutions on our side that are like what they have done for decades on theirs. But Grant, I want to go back to what you said, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. We've got to, this is not the time to take the foot off the pedal. right? We got to keep driving. We got to keep support. To your point about the water cooler, it's so apt because we need to be open now and say, yep, this is the right thing to do. Boom, 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 boom. We got to keep the conversation going. And we've realized in the last, few years that we can be very open. We don't have to hide and cower with our MAGA hats. Like we can be proud and wear them. But the thing that I wanted to just tee off is that I have been shocked at how bad the Dems' messaging and response has been since the election. The attacks on his nominees, whether it's Pete Hegseth or Kristi Noem, Pam Bondi, it's like, dude, did everyone go on vacation or quit or hopefully move out of the country? Biden's farewell address was dark. I mean, I'm like, are you guys tired or what happened? But I agree with you, Grant, but I don't get the sense that they've like almost lost all their good players or something, but I don't get the sense that they're engaged the way that I thought they would be.
Well, remember, they just lost the Super Bowl of politics, right? So they're a little beaten down right now, as well they should be, because the American people are onto them. So a lot of these attacks that worked 4 years ago and the media hopped on, they backfired this election. All these attacks, it all backfired on them. So they've got to tread very, very lightly. Americans have short memories, though, and once we get in here, I think the left is going to rear its ugly head again and come out screaming. And I'll tell you this, really the ones that we need to keep the pressure on are moderate Republicans to the RINO Republicans and name-only Republicans. Tim Burchett is a great congressman from Tennessee. He's become a really good friend of mine. He's a regular on my Real America's Voice show. He said something that was so interesting. He said, I believe we have 150 days to get this agenda through. If we go longer than that, we will not get it through Congress. He says, I don't trust any of my fellow, a few of them, but most of his fellow Republicans, I don't trust them to have the backbone and get this through. Now, President Trump has a very uncanny way of making Republicans stronger than they've ever been before. That's good news. But this 150-day mark that he put on, I think he might be right on this, because these politicians will fall back into their old uniparty ways and they'll do it very, very quickly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Jen, the last thing I want to talk about in terms of imagery is I couldn't help but notice the tech CEOs in very prominent positions. And I am in politics. I've always been a believer in the idea that politics is a game of math. If you wake up today and say, you know what, I've been wrong for 8 years. President Trump is right. I want to join, which I met a lot of people in the last few weeks that have said, I didn't vote for him in 16. I didn't vote for him in 20, but he was right this time. Welcome to the party. I'm glad you're with us. But just to be clear, you don't get to cut the line, right?
Exactly.
And so number one, I don't like the optics of these guys. And number two, I'm just going to say it. I don't believe it. Like, you can put a chain on, a T-shirt, grow your hair out a little, Mark Zuckerberg, but I don't buy any of this crap for a second. He has to be transactional and suck up to Donald Trump. But if the second that he has an opportunity to flip back over to his left-leaning Zuck-Buck giveaway ways, he will do it. And so I just don't like the optics of these guys being treated like royalty. They should have to write big checks. They should have to suck up. But they shouldn't get to cut the line in front of a bunch of people who fought really hard for President Trump. And I just don't like the optics of it.
I agree with you, Sean. I hate to criticize anything in the way things were done this weekend, but I'm with you that I don't trust these tech CEOs. To see Jeff Bezos there, to see Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of TikTok is there at inauguration. I would have loved to have seen real Americans, so to speak, the people that have fought, that have struggled over the last several years, the Scott Presslers of the world in that room today. I don't know if he was even in there or not, but that's kind of who I would like to see, because again, you look at what they did to him, how they worked hand in hand with the Biden White House to censor information over the last 4 years, didn't admit it until they were backed into a corner. And now that they know they have no alternative, they have no support, they're sucking up to President Trump. And like you, I don't trust what they will do beyond these 4 years.
Let me just say this and be very clear about this. Every one of those people would have been on the stage if Kamala Harris was being inaugurated today. Okay. So that goes to show you where their backbone is. They haven't had some wake up call. This is about their business. And I'm steaming mad at them. You look at Zuckerberg, you look at YouTube, you look at, I was demonetized at Facebook, costing me $5,000 a month for not saying anything that was untrue. I was wiped off of YouTube, all right? Totally not even allowed to make any money there because they just did away with my channel. And TikTok, same thing. Wiped off the face of the planet when I was making a couple $1,000s a month off of TikTok. So this is real money they took out of not just my pocket, but out of many other creators' pockets. And here's the worst thing. They did it not because of me, but because they hated the truth that I was saying. I think they still hate the truth. So TikTok now, President Trump runs to the rescue of TikTok. I can't post anything on TikTok. Right now, and I have a TikTok account, not Grant Stinchfield. I thought maybe that would trick them. Not Grant Stinchfield is the handle. I don't post anything. I have warning after warning after warning for posting regular facts, Sean. Now, is that going to change on TikTok? It somewhat has on Facebook. It certainly has not at YouTube, and that's owned by Google. Nothing has changed at YouTube. I've got a minor YouTube channel that can't get any traction. So I'm not happy these guys are there. I don't trust them. And I will say this about Elon Musk. Elon Musk, I love what he did for President Trump. I'm grateful for him for this. I think he expanded our base. But again, Elon Musk has a lot of ties to some foreign governments. I want President Trump to insulate himself somewhat from Elon Musk because I just don't know what could come down the line with that guy. I'm happy he's here. I'm happy we have his support, but just be very careful with these. You're now in a tank with vipers, all of them. That's how I feel.
I just say I hope that the great advisors President Trump surrounds himself with are keeping the distance with these tech CEOs, with others that have not been trustworthy in the past, and we'll see how that plays out going forward.
Sean, have you heard that Vivek is now icy's road over at DOGE?
So it depends on like what story you read. I mean, there's some that are saying that he's got some frosty relationships, him and Elon. And then there's others saying that he informed the Trump team that he's going to run for governor of Ohio and therefore, needed to separate himself. I tend to think that it's the latter because he's been there, he's been out in front. But I also think, to be honest with you, it doesn't take a genius to look at Elon Musk and realize that he's in charge. He's the boss. I don't think that Elon is one of these guys that likes to co-manage things.
No, but Vivek probably knew he was going to run for governor. And let's face it, DOGE isn't even really a government agency. You're going to be able to make recommendations. That's it. Vivek could have done both. He could have run for governor and be a figurehead there. Don't you think?
So do you think that's a bad thing or a good thing? If he ends up, are you concerned that without Vivek, it's not as successful?
No, I like the thought of Vivek being there just for the sheer fact that I think he gives it a little more grounding. With Elon Musk, this guy, look, he shoots for the stars, no pun intended. And I don't know, the DOGE worries me because I think people are going to really expect a lot. This government is entrenched in bureaucracy, spending. It's going to be really hard for them to rein that in. So I would say, hey, it's great we have it, but manage expectations. I think Vivek maybe could have done some of that.
Yeah, for me, I think part of this is Elon seems like your 50,000-foot guy, like aspirational. Here's what we can do. Da, da, da. Vivek's going to get into the weeds because just kind of his background and be like, hey, this button, no one turned it off. That could save us $100,000. You guys are misspending here. That's $5. Vivek seems much more, and I'm just saying this from my observations. I don't know if this is true, but I just think Elon is much more big picture. Vivek is the kind of guy that's going to get in it, put his head under the hood and look in the engine and figure out.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I'll also say, President Trump obviously appointed these ambassadors to Hollywood. Why don't we have an ambassadors to big tech? I think nobody better to do that than Vivek, the guy that wrote the book Woke Inc., right? Maybe he could have some influence there with some of these tech CEOs that are surrounding Trump right now.
I like that. All right. In the last minute that we have, you name checked TikTok, Grant Stinchfield.
Yeah.
I don't know why anything less than full surrender is acceptable. I don't understand we're having this debate about free speech. It is a national security issue. China is very clear about this. It is a tool to spy on us. I just don't think that, I don't really care. I mean, I think that this argument, well, this is how many people are on it, is even more of a reason to shut it down.
Yeah, I will say this. There are young people that make a decent amount of money off of TikTok. It's like home shopping network light, like do-it-yourself home shopping network. I don't know if you ever scroll through it. There's a lot of people that make decent money off of that. I don't want to take money out of their mouths. Clearly, there is a national security risk. I've got mixed emotions out of this. I would have much rather liked the law to go through. Divest yourself, China. Make sure we insulate and protect American citizens and let TikTok continue. But right now, I'm telling you, TikTok is so oppressive of the truth. Giving them a free pass, I'm not sure was a great idea. So I've got mixed emotions.
I'm with you on that, Grant. I think back to the Trump of 2020 that was so against TikTok. And, that's been kind of ingrained in me. I've not been on TikTok myself. Know a lot of people that are on it, haven't gotten on it. But at the same time, you look at the branding opportunity here and the fact, almost like when President Trump was putting his name on the COVID checks, well, all these young people logging on to TikTok are seeing that message saying President Trump has said he will reinstate TikTok.
Yeah.
Thank you to President Trump. Now, President Trump was very successful with the young vote in 2024. So maybe that'll only help solidify that going into the next election.
Could we not have gotten an agreement from TikTok to say, hey, you know what? No more censoring.
Yeah,
right.
That's it. I mean,
I don't think we've heard the last of this.
But no more censoring.
Yeah. I don't think we've heard the last of it. All right, guys. Unfortunately, a great conversation. Thanks for joining me. We're out of time. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, we're going to go through the executive orders and probably a lot more with Ashley Hayek of America First as well. Then we'll be talking to Congresswoman Nan Hayworth to give us her take on how a lot of this is going to get done. A great discussion headed your way tomorrow and for the rest of this week. Thanks for kicking off Inauguration Day with the Sean Spicer Show. I will see you back here tomorrow. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.